Let's say a hunter has killed a deer and arrived in camp with a lot of meat. Try as they might, he and his family cannot eat it all in one go. They could preserve it for later, but then they will have a surplus of meat, while someone else in camp might have none, and that someone could gain a lot if they attacked and tried to take that surplus away. But that sort of conflict is quite unheard of among nomadic hunter-gatherers. When the hunter arrives with the meat, everyone will immediately be there trying to get him to share, and meat from large game is the most commonly demanded and the most commonly shared food. The hunter has enough to both feed his family and to share, so he would have no immediate gain from hoarding and defending the meat, while sharing the surplus with others can immediately alleviate tensions, so that's what nomadic foragers do. Though among the hunter-gatherers on the planet we live on, that sharing is often not indiscriminate. Among the Hadza, game is evenly distributed among all the families in camp, but the hunter's family gets up to twice as much as everyone else. This is the case among the Yanomami as well, but they also have a strong kin bias in meat distribution, with siblings, cousins and such receiving more than others. And the Mamainde distribute the meat equally among the families, but they do control for family size. I will go with the first way of dividing the meat for my foragers. It's simple and not too unfair. But some societies also have rules on who receives what portions of meat. Among the Gunwingu in northern Australia, the head and one of the forequarters of wallabies and kangaroos go to the hunter. The other forequarter goes to the hunter's companion or to his brother, while the rump and the tail go to the hunter's mother's brother's son, or to his mother's brother's daughter's son. It can get complicated, but having rules helps to prevent various bickering that could arise. And sharing in general also creates debts. Instead of storing the meat itself, the hunter accumulates debts that will be repaid, and he himself also repays old debts when he shares the meat. And the whole network of debts ends up acting as both a security net and a social glue that not only connects together the members of a single nomadic band, but also connects them to other nomadic bands, and those debt connections can always be pulled on in times of need. Out in the Kalahari, the local foragers often make long trips across the desert to give gifts and exchange gossip, in the knowledge that at some point in the future their gifts will be reciprocated. This sort of economy tends to be called a gift economy, but because the participants keep a mental ledger of debts in their heads, calling it a debt economy also works. But for hunter-gatherers, this sort of arrangement really only works with people who they see on a frequent basis. It would not make sense to mentally register a person's debt if you may well never see them again, because then they may well never even get the chance to repay you. And this is where barter comes in, but this barter is often more exciting than one might expect. Among the Nambikwara, if one band spots the cooking fires of another band nearby, they will send people to negotiate a meeting for purposes of trade. If the offer is accepted, they will first hide the women and children in the forest, and then invite the men of the other band to visit their camp. The chief of each band gives a formal speech praising the other party and belittling his own, and then all the men sing and dance together. After which, individuals from each band approach each other to trade. If a man wants an object, he praises it, and the man who owns it shows his desire to get a lot in return by talking about how it's completely no good. This argument carries on until a settlement is reached, which is when each snatch the object they wanted from one another. Once all the trading is over, there's a big feast, which is when the women reappear, and that can sometimes result in the visiting men trying to seduce their hosts' wives, which can then end in fights or even death. The Gunwingu of northern Australia solved this whole issue by incorporating sex into the activity of trading itself. In a description from 1940s, a group that had access to good European cloth invited a group famous for their serrated spears into their camp to trade. In that part of Australia, Aboriginal men and women all belong to one of the two moieties. Nobody can marry or have sex with someone within the moiety, but anyone in the opposite moiety is a potential match, even if they are married. And so that instance of barter from 1940s began with a group of Ganwengu men and women entering the camp's dancing ground. Two men started singing, one started playing on a didgeridoo, and then women of opposing moieties from the host camp presented them with pieces of cloth, and then dragged them down to the ground for some flirting, and then led them away for some sexy times. And it carried on like that, with more women presenting men with cloth, and then the men of the host group joined in as well, presenting women from the visiting group with cloth, and then going off for sexy times away from others. Once the visiting group was satisfied with all the cloth they'd acquired, the women of the host camp all lined up. The men of the visiting group approached them with spears in hand and hit the women with the flat of the blade, and then handed the spears to them, and the trade was complete. The Ganwengu way of doing things seems like the more fun one, but instead of dividing my imaginary foragers into two moieties, I'll go with 4 sections. Let's say you are a woman who was born into Section B. Your husband has to be a man from Section A. Your sons and daughters are in Section D, and their marriage partners belong to Section C. Your grandchildren are in Section B, same as you, and your grand-grandchildren will be in Section D, same as your children, and so forth on to infinity. My hunter-gatherers are not territorial up in the mountains, which means that they will travel far and wide, and sometimes run into complete strangers. But as long as those strangers know each other's section and age, they can group one another with their family members, and treat them as they would treat those family members. And this can apply to interactions with foreigners as well, where a culturally savvy trader can claim membership of any of the 4 sections, depending on what sort of interaction she wants to have. But in addition to the 4 sections, there's also the division along the lines of gender, which will be the topic of the next episode, so join me there.